Conversations with Influencers. I'm here with Kader and Imran, technology executives who are experts in digital transformation.
Good evening, Richard. This is Kader, so I'll go first. I really appreciate you having us in your blog, and excited to be part of this discussion. And during this tough times and unprecedented times, I think we all have to stay together and figure out how we need to kind of all work together and share information between us so that we can still continue to move forward.
Excellent. And Imran?
Hey, this is Imran. Thanks for having us. We are waiting to learn more about this and how this thing works out. So thanks for having us.
Well, you're welcome. It's good to have you both on the podcast. So I'm Richard Lowe. I am the senior writer and owner of The Writing King. I'm a ghostwriter, and I'm doing this podcast just to talk to various influencers, find out what's going on in their industry and with their lives. And it's more of a conversation format than an interview format, so hope you all enjoy it. So I'm going to start by asking Kader, what is digital transformation? Let's discuss that.
Sure. Digital transformation is the buzzword that everybody has kind of been talking about for the past 10 years, right? This is not a new concept that's coming in, but it is an interesting kind of a journey that a lot of organizations have to kind of take to make sure that they are all kind of focused on the customer experience and see how do they actually give the customized customer experience by each channel the customers comes through, so that they feel it is their own way of doing a transaction or a process or whatever you want to take. It's for them to kind of feel that they can do it at any time, any place. Because in this new age of the cell phones and iPhones that actually has transformed a lot of the way that how we do even our day-to-day work, it actually makes it more important for organizations to be able to adapt and be able to deliver the experience that everyone is looking for. So at least at macro level, that's what I actually look at as a digital transformation that organization needs to kind of get, is giving that specific experience by the specific channel that the user is coming through.
That's interesting. Today I had an experience of a customer experience that was negative, and it didn't have to be, and that's with the Florida unemployment website. I was just checking it out because it's on the news, and it's horribly slow. It's crashing. It you lose pages. It's probably about 10 years old, and it looks like old technology. And it's written in ASPX, that's ASP.NET. And you can tell that it's really old, and it's getting tons of complaints. It's gone all the way up to the senators and governors of the state. And it didn't have to be that way. There is actually a law in Florida, the bill, that says that everything in Florida is going to move to the cloud. Well, obviously this didn't, because they just spent, I think they said $7 million on servers and equipment. So that wasn't in the cloud. But if it had been in the cloud, it occurred to me, they could have just used the elastic capabilities of the cloud, and this thing would have performed very well. And it wouldn't have taken all this capital expenditures. It rather would have been operating expenditures. And I think they would have been better prepared. So that, to me, is an example of where the customer experience was rather poor, but it didn't have to be, and it shouldn't be. And I found it interesting that they're actually trying to fix it by building in more servers and more disks and things like that, and hiring people rather than moving it to the cloud, which is probably easier than buying new equipment. What do you think of that kind of thing?
So, there's two things, right? And I'm sorry that you had that kind of a negative experience. And as you very well know, because of the COVID, a lot of the governments, organizations are trying to do their best to kind of start bringing the information to people as quickly as possible, right? So, kudos to a lot of the folks who are actually trying to do it, but you're absolutely right. If we had actually planned our journey specifically, how the experiences are and start working towards it, that would have actually would have been a much more pleasant experience, and you would have been much more appreciative right now, right? Based on what is happening around us. The challenge with a lot of the organizations, right? So I agree with you, is the cloud first, kind of going into more of a channel agnostic and trying to create a custom experience by the channels. It's been ahead of a lot of the technology heads and a lot of the CEOs of organization and heads of organization as well. Now, what has been bothering a lot of them over the period of years is the security, because specifically government and agencies have more personal information than, I wouldn't discount other organizations, they do have as well. But they need to be extra careful to make sure that like the data security is more important and protecting your data becomes more important. But that has changed as well over the number of years, where cloud has become more secure, and there's been a lot of secure perimeters that's been established around it to be able to kind of give you the type of security and the localization that is needed, specifically kind of handle PII data. So, that's one of the things that Imran and I, when we actually got in our past few organizations, that has been some of our push within the organization to get to, is to kind of get into more of a cloud first, API first, and kind of mobile agnostic kind of approach to a lot of these applications that we want to get out and try to focus on the customer centricity. So that way we can actually define that user experience by the channel that the customers are coming in, so that like we can scale up, scale down based on the needs or the reduction on the need, and focus on our assets, and which is really important. And specifically, Richard, based on some of the COVID things that's happening, right? A lot of the organizations are kind of focused on creating this work from home capability, creating a platform that can scale up, right? And specifically, at least us being in some of the cloud environments, it just significantly helped us to scale up and be able to create that experience. Obviously, we had, few hiccups, but it was quickly fixable for us to expand and be able to kind of preserve and make sure everybody's safe, sound, and healthy in their homes, but still we can focus on creating the productivity that we've been looking for from our employees to kind of still keep performing at their peak.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a client who is in Canada, and they suddenly had to move 1,000 people from the office to the field, and they managed to do it within a couple of days because they are cloud-based. And it was just a matter of they used bring your own device, and everybody where they could, and then when they couldn't, they gave people laptops and computers, and they were able to do it very quickly and very efficiently. Of course, it was unexpected, and there was all the hassles involved with it, and it was very upsetting. But within a matter of a few days, those 1,000 people were all working off-site from home, and they were doing very well, with the occasional hiccup, of course. But and Publix is another example. That's a supermarket chain down here in Florida. Their website's been hammered, obviously, because people are trying to order stuff and have it delivered. And it's been performing very well. I went on it to order some stuff, and customer journey is great. It's easy to use. It's fast. It's efficient. It's obviously more modern technology. Very impressive digital presence there. And the customer journey, customer experience was very good. Imran, what kind of experiences have you had with the customer experiences?
I mean, the something at this scale on the pandemic, the whole globe is going through. Managing a scale for such a large audience for websites or applications, it's definitely difficult, right? But I think the majorly problem people are facing, or the older technology is facing, is because the technologies are not designed keeping customer in picture, right? Unemployment kind of a website must know that there will be a pocket picks where they might have to respond to them. I mean, can you imagine the experience you had today? And when I and Kader talk about technology and transformation, I think major goal is to keep customer and clients in the focus. If you design things keeping those items in mind, I think those kind of issues can be avoided pretty fast. Cloud has been there for many years now, and it's as secure as a homegrown data centers also. So the argument of security on cloud versus modern technology, it's almost dying. I mean, talk about the top known organizations, they are all on cloud. Even the larger banks and financial institutions are also on cloud now. It gives that flexibility to increase the peak, which probably almost every application is facing today.
That's true. Kader, anything to add to that?
No, I agree with Imran, right? Like, so if you look at it, and I think that's a very valid point that Imran brought up, right? Like, we both were at a financial services industry before, and and specifically, they were the ones like that were trailing behind with compared to a lot of the organization, but they made their leap as well, right? Like, a lot of the organizations, banks have actually moved into the cloud in variety of different areas, and they are actually scaling. And if you look at like the experiences that we all have been having, is been phenomenal, at least, right? Like with all the banks, with respect to the type of functions and features they have, that scalability and usage, kind of work from home, be able to deposit from your home, and be able to send transfers of money to people that's in need right now. All of that, none of that has been impacted or affected by this process, right? It's, there's nothing that's being talked about. So that is an important thing, that like pretty much the security factor of these cloud-based technologies it's actually become part of the DNA of it. So it's not like security separate and cloud is separate. That's actually become more integrated. So which is going to pave pretty much the way not only the US is going to be, the way the whole world is going to operate post this pandemic of COVID-19 is going to be having a whole digital footprint, right? Everyone is going to look at the whole digital footprint, the digital ecosystem, and how to actually collaborate and or kind of get into that digital footprint as quickly as possible is what everybody's mind is going to be all about, right? Because I think this pandemic has changed every one of our lives, in different ways, but it has changed the whole goals and objectives of the organization going forward completely, right? And that's the important thing that we all have to be looking through. How do we actually figure out the journey, and how do we, get ourselves start collaborating in this digital type of new world that we're going to be living moving forward?
Yeah, the thing that fascinates me is I think this is going to change the United States and probably the rest of the world completely. The long commutes that people do. I mean, I used to do an hour and a half commute to and from work, and it was a murderous commute. 20 miles, for an hour and a half is ridiculous. And this was in California. And that's probably going to highly reduce in comparison to what it was just a month ago. I know smog's way down, and all kinds of things like that are way down. And it's very interesting the way that kind of predicting and looking at the crystal ball and thinking, how is this going to change us once we're out of this pandemic thing? How will it change? Right? How will it change us? Yeah,
absolutely. But look at this, right? Like sometimes we always say about like some of these new wave of thinking was much much advanced for the time that it was for. Imagine Peapod now, right? If you had actually thought about Peapod right now, pretty much they would be one of the largest kind of grocery retail chain online at this point in time. Mm-hmm. Because some of these were much advanced for the time, but at least what is going to define the future right now, it's already been set up. The goals of a lot of these CEOs of the organizations have already been set up. by this pandemic or by COVID-19 going forward.
Yeah, one of the things that impressed me was I got an email from Zoom. We're recording this on Zoom right now. And Zoom they admitted in their email they were in no way prepared for this kind of thing. And they've had to, everybody's using Zoom now for homeschooling and for business and so forth, because Zoom is one of the best platforms out there, I think. There's probably others. And the email went into how they've had to expand their network multiple times over, that they didn't expect. The security holes and things like that were identified, and they fixed them fast, and they've been right on top of it, and they've been soliciting any problems people have to correct them. I mean, it's a really good response, because that's the other side of this digital transformation journey, is the support part of it, I think, is that you've got to understand that there are going to be issues. There are going to be problems. So a lot of it's new. And if you're not quick on the ball to support things and ready to admit that there were issues that need to be addressed, then you're going to have customers that don't want to come back because you lied or something like that. And if you're honest, people come back. So Zoom said, yeah, we had problems, but we fixed them. And we still have problems, but we're fixing them. And they said that the increase in stuff was dramatic, like an order of magnitude higher than they used to be just a month ago. It's amazing.
The trend has changed, right? User expectations, excuse me, trend has changed. Previously, user wanted everything almost pretty perfect, but lately, if you see millennials last 5 to 10 years, they like to see improvements, and part of that improvement, right? Organizations who willing to say these are the bugs and these are the holes and different kind, from a performance to security to anything, admitted, those organizations are actually doing much better than those organizations who are not really ready to share those kind of information. Also, mobile industry and all this industry has also taught the user that, every 6 months you will get something better, something new to use for it. This has helped digital transformations, right? Eventually, every invention needs to have a progress path, and that is very important. As you rightly said, feedback mechanism is very important, and some of the feedback for digital transformation comes from a support side, right? How your user is interacting with your system, how your user is reacting to features and functions you have just provided to them. It's very important. So your example of Zoom, it's a pure example that you need to take that feedback, you have to prioritize that feedback and probably fix it accordingly. I'm sure Zoom had some other plans for April, May, June to come up with some new features and function, which was more, out of their way of thinking better. But that plan has changed completely, because now they have to worry about the millions of people who are using today and the security loopholes and the network increase and all that. I'm sure their plan has changed. So digital transformation is not one way path. It needs to have feedback. It needs to listen what is happening after we do something. And that keeps me and Kader probably more excited to know things which we just put it in applications and users are using, how they are reacting to those.
Yeah, exactly. My neighbor just started homeschooling her kids, and she is thrilled because it turns out that what used to take the whole day for the child in school, the child finished the lessons in an hour and a half at home. And I've been walking around talking to my neighbors, and it's basically true for all of them. There was of course an adjustment period, but it was very fast, and they don't have the distractions of school. They don't have all the other things that go with it. Of course, they're also missing the socialization of school, so that's a problem that will come back once we go back to schools and things. But that's an example of something that is probably going to permanently change society, because people are finding for the first time that homeschooling actually works, and it works well. And now they're with their families again. Shocker. And they have to adjust to having the whole family at home. A major shocker. And we do their living space and all these things happening faster than we could have possibly imagined because of the emergency. And something like Zoom, instead of becoming a nice to have, is now an absolute essential. You have to have it.
I agree, right, Richard? Because there's one phrase actually comes to my mind from the movie from Jurassic Park, right? Life always finds its way. And this is how, like, we all are finding our own way as part of this, right? And I actually like, specifically this whole, your neighbor you're talking about, and I have 3 kids, and I'm kind of looking at what these kids are doing. It's amazing, right? With not much distraction, like the kids are able to finish what they need to do. I agree with you, the social interaction part that, we'll all get there, right? Pretty soon this will be done, and then we'll be out there going through it. But what I see in my kids is like now they're spending more time on a lot of creative, interesting things that they didn't have on their normal routines of days to be able to do that, right? I've seen my son create more stuff, that's around the house right now that I'm actually proud to kind of display it. And it kind of gives him to kind of start working on that incremental, right? Which is just an amazing part. And what Imran kind of said as well, right? It starts reflecting with your kids when you see at home as well, where, they start with something base, then they actually kind of fine tune it better, then they fine tune it, then they fine tune it. And so my son was trying to build like a floating board with just straws. Like he wanted to use just straws to do it, but he had so many different iterations. Then he came to me, he asked me for some, what do you think about this? Went to his sisters, went to his mom. It's kind of like, this digital life of kind of doing things more agile, right? Being able to get into more of a product mindset where you start with base and then get feedback and then start building on top and get feedback and building on top. So you can come back with a much better product and much better usage. It's just been an amazing thing. And you can just see that in your own kids right now that's happening, right? And I think kudos to Zoom. There's like Teams, there's WebEx of the world, there's Google Meet. There's quite a bit of all these different tools that have actually stepped up to be able to kind of help with this educational process to kind of keep that going through this pandemic as well and be able to kind of, react to it quickly. But the thing also, I'm very excited, right? A lot of these organizations, they are actually getting live feedback right now from the customers, as things they use. So what happens is like it gives you more better path to define your product feature roadmap going forward. So that way, when we actually come out of it is, with not much of user groups, you got some really live feedback in be able to get your product even better, right? So it's going to be, where we started a month ago. And if you look at 3 months from now, the product is going to be much better with all the, experience that the users are looking for.
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously it's difficult times, but it's also very interesting times when you look at some of the trends that are going to come out of this over the next months and years. It's going to be a completely different world. First of all, these government websites that have, obviously they worked before to a certain extent, to more or less, but now they're going to have to work much better because now instead of having, I think a statistic I heard was there were a couple 100,000 people or over a certain period of time to the floor of unemployment, and now there's millions. They obviously need to be able to handle that kind of stuff in the future for these kind of unexpected events. So they're going to scale up, and they'll figure it out, and it'll come out better. Obviously, with any kind of change, there's always chaos and there's always frustration, and they'll learn from that, and they'll have better management techniques, better security, better performance, better able to do it. The SBA website is an example of that. Went over to the SBA website last Sunday, and it was god awful. It was horrible. It was old style. You had to fill out Word forms and do that. On Monday, that was on Sunday. On Monday, brand new website. Yeah, the form. They had a form for the loan that I wanted. They had. It was fast. It was amazing. They did it overnight, or probably a few days, but it was quite a thing. And then a few days later, it changed again, and it changed again, and it's still pretty fast. The website's not slow. And they obviously have some technology behind it, because I'm sure the SBA website got slammed hard by millions of people all of a sudden, and they didn't plan for that. And it's doing rather well. I don't know about, I'm not talking about the SBA loaning process. I'm just talking about the technology here. And it was impressive, considering the magnitude of the disaster that they were faced with.
I agree, right? Like it's more than like, previously it would have been hundreds and thousands of people. Now you're talking about at least 120 to 150 million, people trying to get onto it, because either they were independent contractors or they, or their small business, they want to keep things running up here, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the government, in certain areas, they're doing a phenomenal job right now to kind of step in and be able to kind of create that experience that the users are looking for at this point in time.
Yes, exactly. And I kind of look at the disaster. When a disaster happens, there's always chaos. You can't plan for disaster. I mean, you can do the best planning you can, but you never know what kind of disaster is going to hit. It could be a hurricane, could be an earthquake, could be a tsunami, could be a pandemic. So when it happens, you do the best you can. And it's only been a month or two since this pandemic started, and things are already adjusting. Obviously, they're not adjusting fast enough in some areas, and in some areas they're adjusting well. And like we're all on Zoom now. I mean, everybody I know is using Zoom or one of the other ones that you mentioned. There's about 6 or 7 big communications companies, Microsoft and so forth, that have a Zoom-like thing. They're all stepping up to the plate. The grocery stores, of course, are getting hammered. For some reason, everybody wants to buy toilet paper, and there is none. And their websites have seemed to be doing pretty well. I'm sure most of the supermarkets had to push their websites off to the cloud a long time ago, and those that didn't are probably regretting it right now. And it's just amazing the looking at what the transformation that's happening to America. Now, I can't speak for the rest of the world because I live in the United States, but I'm sure it's happening elsewhere too. The transformation is amazingly fast, and we're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of this hurricane of the pandemic, and of course we feel the chaos, and of course we're upset, and of course we're unhappy, and of course the news is freaking out, and of course the politicians are screaming at each other. But the transformation is immense, and it's incredible, and we're going to be in a different place. One of the things that I was thinking of was people aren't commuting anymore, and smog and air pollution and stuff is way down. I'm sure that has an effect on global warming, or whatever you call it nowadays, climate change. If this is permanent, this could dramatically change the climate change picture. Maybe the world won't warm as fast, or maybe it'll solve it entirely. I don't know. But if this becomes a permanent change, that has an effect on those particular algorithms that they use to predict global warming. If we're putting in 30 or 40% less junk in the air, well, maybe that helps a lot. And that's an interesting side effect.
I agree, right? Like I was actually reading an article, Richard, was there's a specific type of turtles which is actually considered endangered, and that actually shows up on the west coastline of India, and because of so much thickly populated beaches and all that stuff, they've never came there and then be able to lay their eggs. And what I've actually been told is there's about like 3,000 or 4,000 of them right now have been they've come and laid their eggs, and another couple of months they'll all be hatched, and they'll be all kind of growing up pretty fast, and which is an amazing thing, right? I start seeing, because I use this Nextdoor app to know what's going on within my neighborhood, and see if there's something, if I could be of help in any shape, size, or form. And I see a lot of these people kind of posting, hey, I saw a turkey in my neighborhood. Oh, I'm seeing a hen that's walking around in my neighborhood, which is unheard of being part of the suburb of Chicago, right? Unless and until you live close to a farm, which, the area that Imran and I live is kind of pretty thickly populated. It's the 3rd largest city in Illinois. It's amazing to see all this nature and wildlife trying to kind of get back their space again. and be able to enjoy themselves, a part of the world that's coming out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Imran, have you seen similar things in your area?
Yeah, and some of the changes are going to be permanent, right? But you want to or not. I think working from home, there are organizations who were pretty strict about it. They had different thoughts and policies around working from home. But this tells that people can be constructive and efficient probably working from home. I mean, in a corporate, losing a half an hour for a one professional is a big deal. Think about for a personal life, losing a couple of hours every day, 5 days in a week for just to commute to work. No productivity. You're sitting in a car, and no efficiency. I mean, and now technology has given us gadgets like mobile phone. People started using on the car. Why? Because they are bored, not because they want to use it. They are bored for 45, 50 minutes. So some of this thing is going to change. And some change is going to be permanent change. And I think we should be excited for that.
I think a lot of the changes are going to be permanent. And that's what I meant. It's going to change the world, or at least the United States, forever.
Yeah.
United States, North America, the whole world probably, because once you've been telecommuting for 6 months or whatever however long this is going to last, it's going to be probably a lot more difficult to go back.
Yeah.
In telecommuting and teleschools and whatever. And I'm actually kind of amazed that the communication system's been holding up to this strain. It seems to be doing quite well. I'm getting really good response time on my internet. And I mean, I know there have been some reports of some people who have had some blockages in some areas that didn't have enough fiber or whatever. But overall, the internet seems to be holding up very well, performance-wise, considering how many people just jumped on it in a matter of days.
Yeah.
What have you guys seen on that? Has it been going pretty good?
I agree. It's been actually pretty good, at least from my side, right? Because, I was not expecting the bandwidth was just for us to kind of watch TV and then just be on the net if we need to do it part-time. And now this has become a full-time work. Luckily, our neighborhood has had some fiber laid out, so which kind of gave us the bandwidth that we're looking for. But from a corporate, if you look at from a corporate organization perspective, right, like, a lot of their bandwidths were kind of based on you using at work, and now they had to kind of change a lot of that bandwidth and reallocate, so that way it can get some external, when people work from home, that capacity gets used in that, rather than in your offices, right? So a lot of corporate infrastructure teams had to kind of work pretty hard in trying to move and change the bandwidth allocations to the right areas of focus, so that way you can actually govern less usage at work and then more usage for external connections, so that we can all be productive. So, I would, that's the type of change I'm looking. I know Imran would have his own thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I had a couple of disaster in the last 2 weeks where my internet was not working for a few hours, right? And there was a time when the world was talking about electricity, and now I think both, right, electricity and internet has become such an integral part of it. But what my experience, though it was 2 hours down, my provider right away sent an SMS to me saying that, we know it's outage and they are expecting it will fix in 2 hours, and it actually got fixed within an hour. Two time I had that problem. But and I think we talked about it some time back, right? If you keep your customer and the people who are affected with this kind of abrupt problems, I think people do forgive. People do acknowledge that, things are not easy. They know how difficult they themselves are solving a lot of problem day to day in their daily lives. So it is difficult to manage, but I think if you share, you keep your customer and your audience inclusive. I think people adjust much better than you don't let them know.
Well, yeah, exactly. I receive those same kind of SMS messages, text messages, from my provider. And if I get a message, which I do, if the internet goes down, it says the internet's down. We know it's down. It's down because a car hit a pole, and we got a team on the way, and we don't know how long it's going to be up yet because we haven't gotten there. And then a few minutes later or half an hour later, the team's gotten there, and it's going to be up. They figure it's going to be up in 3 hours, and it's up in 2. And I'm like, okay, fine. I can go back to sleep or go take a walk or something. And usually they're pretty close to unless they find something more. But I get constant stream of SMS messages saying, okay, this is the status, this is the status, this is the status. And that's part of the customer journey. Even in the hotels, we've talked about this before, where Marriott or something like that, one of the hotel chains, you get text messages along the entire route. We know you've arrived at the airport. Your baggage is waiting for you. Through your whole journey to the hotel, to the room, to special things that they can provide for you, to when you're leaving, not just text messages, but emails and personal service. Also, people are involved in this, and that's all part of the customer journey, and that makes your business better and compete with other businesses, because obviously hotels have to compete now with Airbnb, which is a whole different model. Taxis need to catch on to that kind of thing, and they probably have in many localities, that they need to provide the same kind of customer journey for their customers, because how do they compete with the new model of Uber and Lyft? And they compete by providing better service and understanding what their customers want, and that's done by customer survey and real-time statistics and things like that. We've talked a lot about that kind of thing, that you've got to know what your customers want. Because if you spend all the money to put in something they don't care about, if you're sending out text messages and they don't want them, you're just going to shove them away. So you got to know what they want, right?
Exactly, Richard. That actually brings up a very interesting point. For me was, and it's one of my professors at Northwestern University. He had kind of described that in one of our class, right? And so this was one of these pretty large, tractor manufacturing company. And so they had called these professors and said, hey, you know what? We built all these pretty phenomenal feature-based, product and this massive truck, and it has everything and anything that you want to do. But for some reason, we are not actually able to understand why they're not going to use, why are they not being used? Because we're not getting enough data and all these things that we put in place. And so these professors went in there and they did their research, kind of looked through it. And the thing that they saw was there's almost like, it was like a airline cockpit, but then there's about 90% of it was actually taped with duct tape. So there was so many different buttons. It was all actually put with duct tape, because the people who actually were using were, not only farmers, but helpers who are helping some of the farmers. And they were actually getting so confused. So that's why only there's, whatever that needs to be operationally used, that's the features and buttons that was actually not duct tape. Everything else was duct tape out of that process. And, it's kind of interesting the way, that you and Imran are kind of talking about. It's all about the experience. And, you cannot just give them too much of features, what you think that they need. You want to give them what they want, right? And how they would actually, how their experience would be by using that. That is going to be an important, thing as we kind of look at some of these journey going forward as the world has, is going to be changed. It's going to be important. How do you actually start looking at digital transformation? How do you look at your products and features that underline that you're going to give it back to your user is going to be very important. I'm sure you guys would have had your own experiences around it, but it just hit me a sweet spot where it reminded me of one of these classes, and 90% of it was duct tape. And even though there were so many features, but no data was being produced because there was no usage of that.
Yeah. I can't even state how many times I've been told to write systems or write programs and things or design them or whatever that people didn't use because we didn't ask the people what they wanted. And it was frustrating. Sometimes even we knew the managers, low-level managers and coders and mid-level managers knew that this wasn't what the customers wanted, but we did what we were told, and we were right. And I do. Sometimes this just takes manual surveys. At one retail chain that I worked at for many years, we did a survey of how can we make our stores more efficient, more aimed towards what people want. So we put in. We've hired a team to come in and actually observe people as they walked around the store. And what they found is when people walk into a store, 90% of the time they turn right. That's an interesting thing. So if you've got stuff on the left, it's not going to sell as well. And then the first thing people want to see is flowers. That makes them feel good. The second thing they want to do is pick up produce because that makes them feel healthy. Then you put the junk food because now they feel good that they bought the produce. They feel like they've done something healthy, so they can buy something to reward themselves. And we found that out with customer surveys and watching customers as they shopped and experimenting a little bit. And that's what it takes to understand your customers is you actually have, and you can do this with statistics and things, you actually have to watch them. But you could do that on websites with shopping cart analysis and data analytics and understand how customers are shopping on your website or using your website. And if you're not using that data to do that, you're wasting a lot of data that you could be using, and you're really wasting a big opportunity to find out what your customers are doing. Like maybe they're abandoning your pages. Maybe they're not. Maybe you've got long pages and they're not getting to the bottom. Maybe they are getting to your shopping cart and you don't have the delivery options they want. Maybe you don't take the American Express and they have American Express and you're losing 20% of your customers. These are all reasons why people abandon shopping carts or abandon the shopping experience. I'm sure a huge company like Amazon or Walmart have figured this out, and you can do just about anything you want on their website, and it's pretty easy. The Publix website was really easy. I want to order something. Thank you. Where are you? I'm here. Good. What do you want? I want this and this and this. Good. You want it delivered? Or you want to pick it up? It was pretty much like that easy. And it was very impressive. I've actually never used it before. And that was done, I'm pretty sure, by customer surveys and probably a little bit of experimentation and a lot of data analytics. And I'm sure they went through their development cycle where they developed it wrong, and everybody does. But it was pretty slick. Pretty slick.
I agree. And Imran actually lives that day in, day out, right? Like, he's kind of lived that out in the current, environment that we are in, and also in the past experiences when we both worked together. I think, Imran, you should share some of your experiences specifically when it comes to this whole, how do you actually look at the features and how do you actually get the feedback from the end, customers to kind of get to the roadmap that we want to get to.
Yeah, I mean, thing which makes me wonder is that people gets very attached to their ideas, right? Usually people think that the ideas which they have, those are the best ideas. And when we design product and feature, to understand your customer, right? And what they are looking for. It's a very important thing. I have developed many applications from web app to mobile app, and I have always struggled to keep people on the journey of how customer is thinking. And nowadays, there are a lot of tools where you can reach out to your customer to understand how it is. But how do you balance between what customer wants plus the distraction of a new technology and new gadgets and new shiny stuff, right? We've been talking about Zoom, and we've been talking about those technology which is helping in today's pandemic issues. If you think about it at core level, customer is only thinking about communication and how they're going to talk to each other, and how more than 10, 15 people can talk within the Zoom, right? I have seen Zoom and Microsoft Team and all those started doing this digital background, where you don't really see what is behind in your camera. You don't see what is in behind, but rather you can put some country logo or something like that. However, no one has figured it out. How do you mute other people? Majority of meetings you see, half of the time people are saying, "Can you please mute? We are hearing a lot of background," things like that, right? And that is what eventually people has to think, right? What is that user thinking? How do you constantly keep ahead of what users' needs are, and how do you cater to those stuff? I mean, I have a lot of interesting stories around it, but in the essence, that's where we all struggle. It's not that no larger organizations doesn't know how to design stuff and all that, right? But you always see some, like even Zoom is not from major organizations like Google and Apple and all those guys, but they are doing much better than the other organizations are doing. So once you figure that out, feature functions, and keep the customer at the core, I think it's easy to solve, and keep it simple, right? It works.
Yes, exactly. And mobile technology is something I don't tend to like cell phones. I was on call for 24/7 for decades, starting from pagers all the way to cell phones to having to carry a laptop with me everywhere I went. So now that I've been running my own business as a ghostwriter for 7 years, I pretty much leave my cell phone at home except when I need it. But as I'm walking around now watching people who are pretty much stuck in their houses and stuck in their yard, they are all on their cell phones, and people are FaceTiming all the time. Young people, old people, I mean, everything in between. They're FaceTiming or whatever the equivalent is on Android, and they're doing video chats, which is something I don't tend to do. And they put little mouse ears on themselves and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. And they're in group conversations, and they're playing games, and they're watching movies, all on their little cell phone. And even when they go shopping, their cell phones reminding them of specials in the store and all kinds of weird things, coupons and so forth. A term called geofencing is something that I ran into a few years ago, where you can say, I only want my little ad to appear in this area. Mm-hmm. So when people drive past this store, they get a coupon on their cell phone. It's kind of an interesting concept. All of these things have to do with digital transformation, and are things that you would look at as a business. Do you want to do this or not? And is it cost effective, or is your sending a coupon to the cell phone actually annoying to your customer and making them say, no, I don't want to shop there? Yeah, those are things that are handled by survey. But it's just part of the digital transformation. Is mobile is a huge part that I was always aware of, but is become even more aware of as I walk around now, and everybody's here. It's like, wow, they're all on cell phones all the time. Yeah. Even their little watch is connected to the internet.
That's very true, Richard, right? Because you've been talking about the surveys, right? And with the evolution of technology and then the thought process, even some of the survey mechanism, you do need traditional surveys and groups to kind of help validate some of these thought process. But now sentiment tracking has actually become pretty prevalent right these days, right? An example of that is like when you're in an airport, you walk out of the washroom with just 3 buttons saying, how did you like the restroom, and just do it. And now they started putting right out of the TSA kind of like entry points, right? You go through security, you have that, right? Where you can actually get some instant feedback right then and there based on your experience, rather than you forcing people to kind of think through that experience again to be able to share that. So that's part of the digital transformation age as well, right? Where you can actually incorporate your sentiment tracking, based and leveraging. This is where you can leverage some artificial intelligence to it to see when do you want to kind of pop that out to your users so that you can actually get some constant feedback right when they experience something, right? Not when the experience is already done and then you're trying to ask their memory cells to kind of revive and be able to respond back, right? That's an important thing that's part of digital transformation is kind of driving some of these, what I would call the instant gratification, right? And you also brought this thing about this whole cell phone. I was actually in a panel and came back with this thing called tilted head syndrome, right? They called it THS, tilted head syndrome, where every one of us are in the phones, right? We are all tilted. We're kind of looking at, we want message information right now, right? Like we went from the industry revolution, now we're actually going through information revolution, right? Where you need information now, right? And that is what is driving everybody. And I think that's what a lot of the organizations are looking in. How do they need to transform to get into the whole digital footprint?
Yep. And I think this this pandemic's going to drive something else that is I'm seeing more and more is people need income now, and the unemployment websites and things, of course, will give them some. But what they're turning towards is the gig economy quite a bit. I'm seeing where they're going out there and they're finding companies that need telecommuting support people. A lot of people are doing that, and then they're selling stuff. They're selling their services on the internet. So if somebody knows how to draw, they go into one of these gig websites and they put up a little thing and they're selling their drawing expertise. Mm-hmm. And this is an interesting community digital transformation, I guess you could call it, or whatever, where this pandemic is forcing people to have to work from home or do something to get income. Well, what can they do? They can make things. They can do services. They can do call center stuff. They can do all kinds of things. Maybe it's even stuff that we used to outsource. Maybe they can do maybe the call centers will start coming back here more and more because people here more and more need the jobs. I know that my neighbor works for one of the big banks, and they need call center people like crazy, and they're hiring like crazy. Walmart's hiring call center people like crazy. Probably Amazon is too, because people need support, especially in times like this. And that's the gig economy is going to be huge. And I don't think that that's really been touched by the news. And I'm not sure that people have really gotten into that yet as a rule, but they will, because as they need money, they're going to get it somewhere.
I agree, Richard, right? Because it's interesting, right? Like about like a little over a year ago, I was actually talking about and I think Imran and I were talking about this, right? Like where we were looking at a trend of how HRs have to kind of go look at talent pool going forward, right? Because right now what we've been talking about is talent pool about, hey, we don't have talent pool, let's go figure out from somewhere else, move them, bring them here and do it. And this whole gig economy or a gig job type of things where you create a job post and then like somebody else will do a specific, a piece of work, and then you can actually get back in. So going forward, you're right? Not only like, people kind of telling what their services are. Now companies are going to look into this and saying, hey, I have a project, and a project, rather than me trying to find all these people that I need to kind of ramp up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my people for anything that's not, I'm going to do it in some posting where somebody can actually take the job, finish the job and check it back in, and they get paid once the job is validated. And then you can incorporate and start building your overall product, feature set as well, right? That is something that is, people were thinking for it's going to take years, and at least, my prediction was it'll take about 3 to 5 years to get there. But you're absolutely right. Based on this pandemic, things have changed so dramatically and so fast. It might even accelerate that time frame to be able to, get done sooner than that 3 to 5 year horizon that I was looking for.
Well, yeah, people need to earn income, and in the past, back in the Great Depression and things, they earned income by shoveling coal and by doing whatever they needed to do in the community to make income. Well, Today they got the whole world at their fingertips.
Yes.
they may as well, you know how to proofread, you know how to write music, you know how to do video, whatever you know how to do, you can just advertise it, and hopefully, if you advertise it good enough, people will find it. And virtual assistants is a great thing for people to do general stuff, taxes, all kinds of stuff that people need to do, that people are willing to pay for. And it's fascinating to me because I'm just starting to see it happen, and I think it's going to explode in the next few months and be huge numbers as people start to discover, hey, I need to make money, and how do I do that?
I agree, Richard. Right? Imagine, right? Like, this is how barter systems used to be, but it was very localized. So this is almost going to be like a global barter system, right?
Yep. So digital transformation is now, and it probably just got accelerated by several years, or even quicker. I imagine that companies like Amazon and Google and Microsoft are busy expanding their data centers very quickly.
Yep.
Imagine they've got a lot of crews there adding servers and disk drives and such. And at least I would think they would, because I'm sure that it just exploded. And it's going to be interesting because this obviously won't be over tomorrow, or next month or 6 months from now. I would think this is going to last a while, and it will change the world. And digital transformation will make this a different experience than the epidemic of 1918, which there wasn't this kind of communication. It was a much different kind of thing. People can stay home now, and maybe that will reduce the however many people catch this disease because they stay home, and they can stay home because they can work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Before they couldn't do that. And they can school from home, and it's not comfortable necessarily doing all that stuff from home. That's a whole different game than people were playing before. But it's a new world. It's funny. Our world was changed upside down, and probably the biggest change that we've had since the discovery of the Americas by the Europeans. Huge change of the world, and it's going to be a brave new world, to coin a phrase. So I think we've been going about an hour now. Any closing thoughts from the two of you?
So, Richard, thanks for having Imran and myself here. Really appreciate, at least letting us share some of our thoughts and in our minds as well. And, what I am looking forward for is this will be done soon. We're all in this together. And, what we need to kind of look forward is where we can actually help each other and focus on the moving forward approach, right?
Of course.
So I think that is what is going to be important for us to kind of do. The things that's happening where when you actually have a disruption, and disruption always starts causing innovation, right? And this is what I think it's going to, like you alluded to, is going to start creating some new, much better innovation so we can start looking at the world in a new way, right? And share it in the right way as well as it's supposed to be shared. I wish everyone, a safe and a healthy, and please stay home so that way you can, kind of keep the curve down.
I will second that. Everybody stay home. Follow the directions for keeping yourself safe, keep your children safe, your family safe, and let's come through this intact, and let's come through this learning lessons that we need to learn and do better the next time. Imran?
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. It was a very good conversation, and I'm hoping we will have some more similar.
Sure.
But thank you for having us.
All right. Well, this has been Richard Lowe, the Writing King, with Imran and Kader. And thank you for the discussion. It was fascinating. And that's it.